Global News Alert. The financial showdown between Russia and the USA, a battle for global supremacy. The world is witnessing one of the most intense financial battles in modern history. The Cold War may have ended decades ago, but the new front is in the financial markets. Russia and the United States, two global superpowers, are now locked in a fierce economic battle that could reshape the future of global trade, currencies, and economic power. As tensions rise and both nations flex their economic muscles, the impact on global markets, security, and geopolitics is unimaginable. Today, we break down the key points of this financial conflict that could alter the global landscape forever. The weaponization of currency, sanctions and counteractions. In the last few years, the United States has been using sanctions as one of its primary tools to exert influence over Russia. The U.S. government has imposed multiple rounds of sanctions on Russian individuals, entities, and industries, targeting their access to global financial markets. These sanctions, aimed at crippling Russia's economy, have had significant consequences, but they've also led to Russia adopting countermeasures designed to shield itself from Western influence. The U.S. sanctions, primarily in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine, cyberattacks, and interference in democratic processes, are seen by Russia as an attack on its sovereignty. The U.S. has targeted Russian oligarchs, banks, and entire sectors like energy and defense. Russia, in turn, has begun to pivot away from the U.S. dollar, the currency that has dominated global trade for decades. Moscow is aggressively pushing for de-dollarization, seeking to reduce its dependency on the U.S. dollar and international financial systems controlled by Washington. One of the key strategies in this financial fight has been the creation of alternative financial institutions and partnerships. For instance, Russia has expanded its use of the Chinese yuan and has been exploring new forms of digital currencies to bypass traditional banking systems. The Russian central bank has also increased its gold reserves, seeing it as a stable store of value in times of financial instability. In response, the U.S. has taken measures to counter these efforts. The Federal Reserve, alongside Western allies, has reinforced the U.S. dollar's dominance by encouraging international trade to continue using it. The U.S. financial system remains deeply embedded in the global economy, with most international transactions still conducted in dollars. However, Russia's growing relationship with China, along with efforts to use other currencies like the euro and yen, is chipping away at this dominance. The stakes are higher than ever as both nations vie for control over global financial networks. In the short term, the sanctions are inflicting damage on Russia's economy, leading to inflation, currency devaluation, and a reduction in foreign investment. However, Russia's long-term goal is clear: to create a multi-currency world where the US dollar is no longer the unchallenged global currency. This battle over the financial system is not just about economics, it's about power. The winner of this fight could shape the world's economic future for generations. As Russia and the U.S. continue to maneuver in this high-stakes game, the consequences for international businesses, investors, and citizens will be profound. Will the U.S. dollar continue to reign supreme, or will Russia's strategy of de-dollarization and the rise of the Chinese yuan shift the global balance of power? Stay tuned as we continue to follow this critical financial conflict, which promises to have a lasting impact on the global economy. Would you like me to continue with the remaining keynotes? Keynote 2. Energy Politics, Russia's Stronghold in Global Energy Markets. Energy plays a central role in the financial conflict between Russia and the United States. Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of natural gas and oil, and these resources are vital not only for its own economy but also for global energy security. The US and its European allies have long sought to reduce Europe's reliance on Russian energy, viewing it as a geopolitical tool used by Moscow to exert influence over countries dependent on Russian resources. For years, Russia has used its energy exports to strengthen its economic and political influence. One of the most notable examples is the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was designed to deliver Russian natural gas directly to Germany, bypassing Ukraine and Poland. While this project was seen as a vital energy partnership for Europe, it also heightened tensions with the United States. Washington strongly opposed the pipeline, arguing that it would increase Europe's reliance on Russian energy and, by extension, Russia's political power over the continent. In retaliation to sanctions and increasing pressure from the West, Russia has explored alternative routes for its energy exports, including building new partnerships with China and other countries. The creation of the Power of Siberia pipeline, which sends natural gas from Russia to China, is part of this broader strategy to diversify its energy markets and reduce its dependence on European buyers. The battle over energy resources extends beyond pipelines. Russia has been increasingly focused on exporting energy to emerging markets in Asia and Africa, where demand for oil and gas is expected to rise in the coming decades. This shift could have long-term consequences for global energy markets and may reduce the influence of Western powers over energy prices. For the United States, energy independence is a key priority. In recent years, the U.S. has emerged as a major energy producer, particularly in the realm of shale oil and natural gas. American energy companies have aggressively expanded their operations, and the U.S. is now one of the world's leading exporters of liquefied natural gas (LNG). However, despite this growth, the US continues to be impacted by global energy prices, and Russia's hold on key energy markets remains a significant challenge. This energy rivalry not only impacts the economies of Russia and the US but also has far-reaching effects on global energy security. With the world shifting toward renewable energy, both nations are working to secure their energy futures, investing in new technologies and seeking new markets. The question remains, who will emerge as the dominant player in the next phase of the global energy transition? Cyber warfare, the new battlefield between Russia and the US. In today's digital age, the battlefield has expanded beyond physical borders, and the financial conflict between Russia and the United States has now taken a dangerous turn into the realm of cyber warfare. Both nations are actively using cyber capabilities to gain an upper hand in the economic and geopolitical struggle. Cyber attacks, espionage, and hacking have become tools of choice in their ongoing battle, with devastating consequences for businesses, governments, and civilians worldwide. The US government has consistently accused Russia of engaging in cyber attacks aimed at undermining its economy, political stability, and international influence. From the notorious 2016 hacking of the US presidential election to the SolarWinds cyber attack, which compromised thousands of government and corporate networks, Russia has been linked to numerous high-profile cyber incidents. These attacks are believed to be state-sponsored and are part of Russia's broader strategy to weaken the US and its allies, while positioning itself as a formidable player on the global stage. For Russia, the United States is also a frequent target of cyber retaliation. In 2020, Russia was accused of deploying sophisticated cyber attacks aimed at stealing sensitive information and disrupting key infrastructure within the US. These attacks have not only targeted government institutions but have also extended to critical sectors such as energy, finance, and healthcare. The use of cyber attacks allows Russia to engage in asymmetrical warfare, using minimal resources to create maximum disruption. But this digital arms race isn't limited to cyber attacks. Both countries are pouring significant resources into developing offensive and defensive cyber capabilities. The US has developed advanced cyber defense units within its military, focusing on both protecting its critical infrastructure and disrupting enemy operations. The Pentagon, for example, has been investing heavily in its cyber command, which is tasked with defending against cyber attacks and launching its own operations against adversaries. Russia, on the other hand, has invested in its own cybersecurity infrastructure, including the establishment of a sovereign internet that aims to protect its digital sovereignty from foreign influence. The country has also developed its own set of cyber weapons, which are rumored to be used not only for espionage and surveillance but also to disrupt global financial markets, energy grids, and other critical systems. The implications of cyber warfare in the financial conflict between the US and Russia are far-reaching. Cyber attacks can cause major disruptions in the global economy, target financial institutions, and manipulate stock markets. The anonymity of cyber warfare also makes it difficult to retaliate in a conventional manner, as identifying the perpetrators of these attacks is often a complex and time-consuming process. Moreover, as both Russia and the US continue to ramp up their cyber capabilities, there is an increasing risk of unintended consequences. A cyber attack gone wrong could trigger a larger geopolitical crisis, one that could escalate into more conventional forms of warfare. With both nations engaging in digital espionage, the boundaries between economic competition and military confrontation are becoming increasingly blurred. In this new world of cyber warfare, the financial system is vulnerable to digital assault. From ransomware attacks to the hacking of financial institutions, the US and Russia are now locked in a high-stakes game of digital espionage, each seeking to gain an edge over the other while avoiding full-scale conflict. The future of this battle will depend on how well both nations can protect their digital infrastructures and, more importantly, how the rest of the world adapts to this new era of warfare. The role of global alliances, shaping the economic balance. As the financial struggle between Russia and the United States intensifies, global alliances play an increasingly crucial role in shaping the balance of power. While the US has long relied on its extensive network of allies, including NATO, the European Union, and other democratic nations, Russia has been working diligently to cultivate new partnerships, particularly with China and emerging economies in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These alliances are not just about military or diplomatic support, they are central to the financial tug-of-war that is unfolding across the globe. The US has been able to leverage its alliances to create sanctions regimes that isolate Russia economically, and it continues to push for more coordinated actions against Moscow's financial systems. Western nations, particularly in Europe, have largely complied with US sanctions, cutting off Russian banks from the global financial system, barring investments, and sanctioning Russian elites. This international pressure is designed to bring Russia to the negotiating table and force political concessions, particularly related to its actions in Ukraine, its involvement in global cyber attacks, and its broader geopolitical ambitions. However, Russia's ability to counteract these sanctions has been bolstered by its growing ties with China, which shares a mutual interest in challenging the US-led global order. China, as the world's second-largest economy, offers Russia access to a vast market and an alternative to the Western-dominated financial system. The two countries have entered into a number of strategic agreements that focus on energy, trade, and financial cooperation. These agreements are aimed at bypassing US-controlled financial institutions, using currencies like the Chinese yuan for bilateral trade instead of the US dollar. Russia's strategy has also focused on strengthening its influence over countries that are less aligned with Western powers. In Africa, Russia has expanded its footprint through investments in energy, mining, and military support, aiming to establish economic footholds that could counterbalance the influence of the US and European countries. In Latin America, Russia has forged alliances with nations such as Venezuela, which has been facing its own economic and political struggles. These partnerships provide Russia with a broader sphere of influence that can be used to counter US efforts to isolate it. At the same time, the US has been working to maintain and strengthen its own global alliances to combat Russia's growing influence. NATO, in particular, is a key instrument for the US, and it continues to push for the expansion of its membership, bringing in countries like Finland and Sweden that are more closely aligned with Western interests. The US is also focusing on deepening economic ties with countries in the Indo-Pacific region, where it is trying to counter China's rising dominance, and is actively working on trade deals and security partnerships in key regions to ensure that Russia's allies do not gain too much traction. The fight for influence over global alliances is critical because it directly impacts trade, currency stability, and the flow of capital. Each side is vying for the loyalty of key countries that hold geopolitical and economic significance. The US and Russia are engaged in a new form of economic diplomacy, where access to markets, financial systems, and international trade routes are often leveraged to gain support in this ongoing conflict. In the end, the financial war between Russia and the US is not only a contest of economic might but also a battle for global influence. The nations that align themselves with either side of this divide will play a significant role in shaping the future of the global financial system. As both sides continue to build and expand their networks of influence, the implications for international trade, security, and the global economy will be profound. The geopolitical ramifications, beyond finance, into global power dynamics. The financial conflict between Russia and the United States has far-reaching geopolitical consequences that extend well beyond economics. This economic struggle is intricately tied to a larger power play between two nations that are seeking to assert their dominance on the global stage. As both countries continue to challenge each other through financial measures, energy politics, cyber warfare, and strategic alliances, the impact on international relations and global power structures is becoming increasingly evident. Russia's actions, particularly in Europe and the Middle East, have sparked tensions that are reverberating across the world. The US and its European allies have been increasingly concerned about Russia's expansionist ambitions, particularly in Ukraine, its interference in neighboring countries, and its support of authoritarian regimes. These actions have led to significant security concerns, and the US has responded by increasing its military presence in Europe, strengthening NATO's defenses, and providing support to countries vulnerable to Russian influence. One of the key flashpoints of this geopolitical struggle is Eastern Europe. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its involvement in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine have placed the region at the center of the financial and political confrontation with the US. The US has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine, providing military aid, economic support, and diplomatic backing. Russia, in turn, views the US presence in Eastern Europe as a direct threat to its sphere of influence and security interests. This has resulted in a prolonged standoff that could escalate if tensions continue to rise. Beyond Europe, the US and Russia are also clashing in the Middle East. Russia's intervention in Syria, where it has supported the regime of Bashar al-Assad, has placed it at odds with US interests in the region. The US has sought to counter Russia's growing influence by supporting various opposition groups and leveraging sanctions against the Syrian government. However, Russia's military presence in Syria and its broader involvement in the Middle East reflect its growing desire to assert itself as a global power with influence over critical regions. In Asia, the US and Russia are also in competition for influence. While the US has long maintained strong economic, military, and political ties with key Asian nations, such as Japan, South Korea, and India, Russia has been actively working to strengthen its relationships with China and other emerging economies in the region. The Sino-Russian partnership is increasingly seen as a challenge to US dominance in the Asia-Pacific, particularly as China continues to rise as an economic and military superpower. This growing geopolitical divide has significant implications for global stability. The financial struggle between Russia and the US is not only about the economic outcomes, it is also a contest for control over international institutions, security arrangements, and the global balance of power. As both countries continue to bolster their alliances and expand their influence, the world is being forced to choose sides, leading to an increasingly fragmented global order. The ramifications of this financial and geopolitical conflict are not just limited to the two superpowers. Smaller countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Latin America, are caught in the middle, trying to navigate their relationships with both Russia and the US. As sanctions, cyberattacks, and military tensions escalate, the global economic system becomes more vulnerable to disruption. The potential for a new Cold War, albeit one fought in the financial markets and digital arenas, is increasingly evident. In the end, the financial and geopolitical struggle between Russia and the United States is more than just a rivalry between two nations, it's a battle for the future of global governance and power. The world is watching closely to see who will emerge victorious and whether this conflict will lead to a reshaping of international relations for generations to come.